When Steven Universe Future first started airing, I was pretty excited because it seemed like the perfect way to continue the story. The original series had so many highs and lows and felt very complete. There were plot elements that were left open-ended, but nothing I couldn't rationalize away very easily in my own head. The story had a complete beginning, middle, and end, and it left me wanting very little more. To simply continue the show the way it was would have been a mistake. You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. But continuing it in a new format, such as it did with the movie and then now with this epilogue series, gives it the room to be something different and something smaller. And that is what Steven Universe Future was overall, something much, much smaller. The original series focused on Steven taking on the entire universe, and this time the story was just about Steven taking on himself and his own issues. Ultimately, labeling itself as an epilogue became the show's biggest strength. No one expects an epilogue to be as big as the rest of the story, or even as big as the climax itself. There was very little that Steven Universe Future could do to make a fan such as myself angry about it, because they already delivered one cohesive story to me, and anything else is just bonus material. That doesn't mean, however, that as an epilogue series, it didn't leave me disappointed. Because of the sheer length of it, they were able to put a brand new self-contained arc in, one that doesn't help or hurt the original ending, but builds upon it for the sake of itself. And that could have been a truly epic thing, but it fell just a little short in my opinion. Which is a bit surprising considering just how amazing the build-up to its ending was. When the show first started, we weren't quite sure what to expect, but it did an amazing job at what it delivered. Jasper was a character who had always seemed to have more to say in the show, and the very first thing they did was bring her back. By the end of the episode, it was clear that the series was going to feature one thing very heavily: fan service, and frankly, that's a good thing. An epilogue is often nothing but fan service, simply giving the characters their happy ending so that people can feel happy for them, even if it is unrelated to what was really important to the overall narrative. Expanding that to a season allowed us to see everything we wanted, and it didn't end with Jasper. Her fight scenes were something we had been pining for years, with Steven's pink mode escalating the action to nearly anime proportions, and adequately setting up the plot for the rest of the season as well. From there, we got to see the happy endings for the characters surrounding Steven, such as Amethyst, finally knowing what she wants to do with her life. What was amazing about this was that it actually did feel like it tied to her main plot thread throughout the show. She didn't just become a wrestler or something seemingly random and loosely connected to her, but rather they took her premise as a character, the idea that she enjoyed living on Earth and just having a good time, and used that to give her fulfillment helping others do the same. In the same episode, we also saw the return of Smoky Quartz, a fan-favorite fusion that we rarely got to experience, and not just for a quick flash like in Change Your Mind or Back to the Kindergarten. We would see the return of even more fusions in a very special episode, which also gave us all the wacky gem hijinks anyone could ever ask for, on top of an already very funny series of appearances from wacky gems throughout its entire run. And then of course there were the new fusions like Mega Pearl and Bluebird Azurite, giving an in-depth look into fusions that don't even involve Steven, something we hadn't actually seen since we met the Off-Colors at the beginning of Season 5. The point is that Steven Universe Future built itself as being everything people had hoped the previous show would be for the longest time. And up until the finale, it seemed like the show was going to stick its landing even better than in the original series, which had its issues. But as I watched those final 3 episodes, that belief suddenly fizzled out. Interestingly enough, almost everything I had predicted did come true, and certain things that I thought were just as far-fetched dreams actually happened. But there was something missing from each of those moments. The moments were often powerful in and of themselves, but somehow they were unable to connect to the other moments around them. The most popular prediction, of course, was that Steven was going to turn into this big ol' wormy boy from the opening, something that had become increasingly obvious as the series progressed, but was accurately guessed before the first episode even aired. This should have been a devastating climactic moment in the show, as should the part where the crystal gems fight the monster and help turn Steven back, but those moments fell flat. All of the ideas were there, and the moments leading up to the transformation were truly horrific, but once it happened, everything suddenly became rather simplistic. This plot thread wrapped up with the gems giving Steven a giant group hug to turn him back. The show was clever enough to use this hug as a reason for Steven to start crying, and his healing tears would uncorrupt him the way they uncorrupted other gems since Change Your Mind. A very smart way to use the show's own lore against itself, but it was animated in such a way that it was almost boring. The climax of Change Your Mind pulled no punches. With an amazing score, paired with the animation of one of the greatest Disney animators of all time, and a sequence so beautifully storyboarded that even people who had never seen the show could appreciate just how cinematic it was. And while I didn't expect this episode to live up to the standards set by Change Your Mind, it felt like it didn't even try to be climactic at all, with moments from every episode leading up to it feeling like they had much more care put into them. One of the earliest predictions I had was that Steven was going to shatter Jasper. It was something I believed as soon as I saw the very first episode and their epic fight scene. It was clear the two would cross paths again, and with Steven getting increasingly more destructive, it simply made sense that he was going to go too far at some point. In the end, Steven did shatter Jasper, and it was one of the greatest moments in the show, even if it was undone just a few seconds later thanks to his healing tears once again. But to see him take it a step further and attempt to shatter White Diamond as well was probably one of the most intense things the show has ever done. And yet, this was ultimately inconsequential. This was done as part of showing just how far down the rabbit hole Steven has gone, but in the end, it's never addressed. He opened up about his problems, and he now talks to a therapist, and we're expected to just understand that he is fine now because of this, that those moments aren't a big deal anymore. Then, of course, there is the fact that Steven left Beach City, and as he noted, he might be leaving Beach City for good. He may never return. This was heart-wrenching to hear, as even though I theorized in several videos that this would be happening, I'd assumed that they would end it with him saying, "It's just for a while, just enough time to find himself," as the ending song Being Human seemed to indicate. But here he was saying that he might just leave his entire life behind forever. But why was he doing this? At this point, it had been shown that therapy and talking about his problems to the others had seemingly fixed him. It was a work in progress, but it had apparently been months since he had transformed, and it looked like he had no more glowing pink outbursts since then. So why was he leaving? In earlier episodes, we learned that his mother had rage issues too, but those seemingly vanished too. The episode Rosebuds ended with Steven banishing her painting to Lion's Mane, effectively compartmentalizing her so he doesn't have to think about her if he doesn't want to. Over the series, his mother had become more and more of a villain, but this was a chance to show one of her strengths, that she dealt with the same rage issues Steven had and somehow managed to overcome them. Ultimately, what seemed to change for her was coming to Earth, and just running away from home and learning to be her own person with her own life. Greg didn't have anger issues, but he had a tragic childhood as well, and leaving home to forge his own destiny was what also led him down the path of happiness. Steven could have learned from both of his parents that he needed to leave Beach City, because no matter how much he loved his family, they were just a reminder of everything that happened. Their existence in his life was triggering his PTSD. But they didn't do that, so why was he leaving? His relationships had gone from seemingly toxic to seemingly healthy, and if you look closely at it, that wasn't even true either. The climax of the show was Connie pointing out that everyone else was making Steven's issues about them, and how it was their turn to be there for him. But the truth is that they had been there for him all season. It started with Amethyst insisting it was her turn to help him, the Crystal Gems clamoring to spend time with him as he did his best to avoid them. His father put his whole life on hold to be there for him, and the Diamonds did everything in their power to help him work through his issues. Ironically, the only person who wasn't really there for him was Connie. No one had abandoned him, and no one had made his problems about them. So at the end of the day, what we're supposed to take from this is that it was about Steven needing to open himself up to their help, instead of thinking of himself as the one who always helps others. And that can be a beautiful idea to explore as well, but if that's the case, then leaving Beach City ruins that, as he can't open himself up to everyone trying to help him and be there for him if he moves away, especially with the intent of never coming back. And that was ultimately the downfall of the epilogue series. Every idea was there, and not just implied, but really right there on the screen happening before us. but they were so disconnected that these beautiful moments meant to strengthen each other just ended up contradicting each other instead. And if you disagree with that, that's okay too. These are just my opinions, I don't expect them to be shared by everyone, and my issues with the finale certainly don't ruin the show for even myself by any means. The original series stands strong on its own feet, as does the movie, and I would say that this ending doesn't hurt Steven Universe Future itself either. Its execution may be lacking, but at the end of the day, it still has just as much heart and meaning as it can, with an ending that just breaks your heart in a very good way. It still managed to do what the entire series is known for, and what many people will continue to look back at for years to come as the reason why this show wasn't just popular, or fun, or cool, but truly beautiful and artistic, and enriching to the human spirit. Thanks for watching.